Mastering the AWS network from zero to hero part 1. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, and today we'll be looking at regions, zones, availability zones, IP addresses, subnet and CIDRs, VPCs, internet gateway, route table, bastion host and NAT gateway. First thing we're going to look at is region. What are regions? Regions are geographical locations where the data centers owned by public cloud service providers reside. The cloud is basically using someone else's resource, computer, or server, and the region is the geographical area in which it is located in. So, when I say geographical area, I'm talking about north, east, west, south. Each region is subdivided into several zones. Our zones are the actual data centers in the regions. In Las Vegas, there might be three different data centers located in Las Vegas. So the actual location of the data centers is what we call zones. And then zones and availability zones are the same thing. I just put it twice at the beginning to try and confuse you, but do not be confused. The next thing we'll look at is VPC. VPC stands for Virtual Private Cloud. It's a private cloud computing environment contained within a public cloud. It's basically having your own space in the cloud. So why are we talking about regions and zones? So your VPC must be located within a region. Right? You can have multiple VPCs within a region, but you cannot have multiple regions within a VPC. So within that region, your VPC should be in one or more availability zones. So that's basically like where your actual resource is located, right? So your VPC might be in this availability zone and might also be in this other availability zone for backup and everything. But you can just have it in one availability zone. Right. So the next thing we're going to talk about is IP addresses. IP means Internet Protocol. These are the rules for communication over the internet. We're not really going to get into what an IP is, but basically you should know that an IP address identifies a network or a device on the internet. Like how everyone has their unique names or a unique number that identifies them. In some countries it's called social security numbers, in others called NIN. Like everyone in every country has that unique number that identifies them. In computing world, we call it IP addresses. So every computer surfing the internet has a unique number assigned to it that identifies it. So that's basically what an IP address is. A CIDR, classless inter-domain routing, is a method for allocating IP addresses and for IP routing. It's basically a method for saying this is a range of IP addresses. All right. So, for example, this is a range, this is a CIDR, and this is an IP address in this CIDR. It's like saying the numbers you can use is 1 to 100, like you can allocate 1 to 100. We have what we call a subnet. Subnet is a logical division of your network. In order to have better control of your network, you can break it down into smaller chunks. So subnets equally have IP addresses. So now, for example, the VPC CIDR, that is the range might be like from 1 to 100. Then for your subnet, you can say in this subnet, all the resources in this subnet should have an IP address of 1 to 50. And the resources in this subnet should have an IP address of 50 to 100. It makes sense, right? But like it's actually not like 50 to 100. There's a whole allocation system. You actually need to learn CIDRs, but I'm just using that as an example. We have our two public subnets in different availability zones for availability. So you can actually just put a public subnet in one availability zone, but we're just doing that for redundancy, so that in case something happens to the resources in one availability zone, that the resources in the other one will still be okay. So now route table. What is a route table? The route table are the set of rules which are used to determine where the network traffic has to be routed to. It specifies the destination and the gateway to reach it. So this is the main route table. When you create a VPC, a route table is automatically generated for your VPC. This route table says that any IP address within this range will get routed to local, that is to your VPC. Like, so it's going to go internally to resources within your VPC. So that's why resources within your VPC can communicate with each other. Okay, now that I've established that my resources can talk to each other within my VPC, how do I get my resources to talk to the internet? By using the internet gateway. So I'll create a route table that links my public subnet to the internet gateway. So you can decide to have private subnets and resources in the private subnets for security reasons, and then we duplicate that for fault tolerance. So let's say we put our application live on EC2 on a public subnet, and we put the database on that instance on a private subnet because we don't want people to be able to access that, and then we duplicate it for fault tolerance. Now, how is this going to work? So remember, resources in the VPC can talk to each other. So our EC2 instances can talk to each other. And with our route table, we can link our public subnet with our internet gateway. So therefore, the instances in the public subnet will be able to talk to the internet. Okay, so enough of theory. Let's head on to the practical. Now, I'm going to log into my AWS account. If you don't have one, you can create one, but I do have one, so I'll be logging into mine. Please note you need a working card to create an account. Okay, so this is my AWS console. If you go to the top right, you see regions. So I'll just click on this arrow here, and then you see a list of regions. US East 1, US East 2. Want to see a number at the end, you know it's a region. Zones ends with alphabet. So these are the regions. You're supposed to pick the region that is close to you or close to your target users, permanently, to reduce lag. But I'm going to pick Europe, Frankfurt, because it's closer to me. You should pick the region that is closer to you. Okay, so I've picked the region and my page just refreshed. So I'm going to go to my search bar and type VPC virtual private cloud, as we talked about. So this is the virtual private cloud dashboard. You can see all your resources. But we're not going to go into that. We're just going to create a VPC. So in creating a VPC, you can choose VPC only, or you can choose VPC and more. VPC and more creates your subnet, create a route table, and like by the right side, you see a preview of all the things that VPC and more is going to create. So you can change it. So we have name tag auto generation. It's this auto generate, like it puts the name tag in front of all the things it's creating, right? So you project VPC, project subnet. Yeah, so that's it. And then we have our CIDR block, which we talked about earlier. So this CIDR block can allow about 65,000 IPs, like more than that, you can see there. So you can reduce or increase it as you want. So, like, you can see that as you change it, the amount of IP addresses that you can allocate reduces or increases depending on which arrow you're clicking. Okay, so next we have IP version 6 CIDR block. This is another version of IP address, but we're not going to be using that. We'll just go to tenancy. We have default and dedicated tenancy. Remember that the cloud is you using someone else's server. You might decide to share the same physical hardware with others to reduce cost, or you might decide to use a physical hardware that is dedicated exclusively to you, providing you with an additional layer of isolation and security. Picking dedicated tenancy will mean that all the instances created in that VPC will be dedicated instances, that is exclusively dedicated to you. But choosing default enables you create virtual machines which may have shared tenancy or be dedicated. Okay, I'm going to leave that as default because I don't want to rack up cost. Now, availability zones. We already talked about availability zones, same thing as zones. You can pick the number of availability zones in a region associated with your VPC. Next, we have our subnets. You can pick a maximum of two public subnets, but that's for this VPC and more. You can actually go and create a subnet and add it to your VPC. Then we have NAT gateways. I've not yet spoken about that, and I will speak about that in a bit. And VPC endpoint. So just stick with me. Okay, so if you go to the right, you can see a preview of all the resources that are going to be created. We can see our subnets, our four subnets. We have two private subnets and two public subnets, one public and one private in one zone. Then we have our route table. That's our public route table linked to our public subnets in two different zones. Then we have our private route table linked to our private subnet in one zone, and the second one private route table linked to our private subnet in another zone for easy, like so that you can control it easily. Um then we have our network connection, that's our internet gateway and our endpoint. But I'm not speaking about endpoint, so we're just going to click on none and remove that right there. Okay, so now that's removed. So this is our internet gateway, which is going to be connected to our public subnets. All right, so we're not going to use this. I was just showing you preview. So we'll click on VPC only, and then we'll just get started from there. Okay, so you just name the VPC, my VPC. You can give it any name you like. CIDR will be 10.0.0.0/16 to create VPC, and that's done. So this is my VPC. These are the details, properties of my VPC. And also have my resource map here where I see my full preview. Have no subnets, one route table, because a route table gets automatically created when you create your VPC. So I can click on here to go to my route table. I can just go to the left. Okay, so these are the route tables I have, but to see which one that is associated with my VPC, the VPC I just created now, I'm going to go to filter and then I'll click on my VPC to just get the route table form. Okay, so you can just see all the details associated with the route table here. You see your VPC and everything. Okay, now that's done, we go to our internet gateway to create our internet gateway to connect us to the internet. Create internet gateway, and then we name our internet gateway. You can give it any name you like. I'm going to pick my internet gateway and then just create internet gateway. It's as easy as that. Okay, these are the properties of your internet gateway, your details. You can go to the top and then click attach to a VPC. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go to actions. I'm going to click on attach to VPC. It's the same thing, but that top one might not be there all the time. Select your available VPC, my VPC, and then you can click here to see the command that you can use if you're using the command line, but we're not using that, so we'll just use that and click on attach internet gateway. Our internet gateway has successfully been created. Woo! Okay, next we go to subnet and then create our subnet. click on create subnets by the right side. Right now we have no subnet in our VPC. Okay, so we'll just create one or create some. Um, Pick your VPC ID, the VPC we just created, and then the name of your subnet. I'm gonna give it. It should be a public subnet. Okay, public subnet one. Availability zone. We've talked about zones before. Pick the one that's close to you. Then CIDR block. We've also talked about that before. The CIDR block for each subnet should be different. So I'm gonna pick 10.0.1.0/24 for this CIDR block. Okay, so let's create a new subnet, a new public subnet, because we can create multiple subnets at the same time. The repetition is key, so we just repeat the same steps which we've done before, but the CIDR block will put 10.0.2 instead of 1 because the CIDR block should be different, and that's it. So we just create another set of two subnets. We could have created the four subnets at once, but I just want to show you how to go back and create it again. So yeah, just the same steps. This will be 3, and the next CIDR block for the second subnet will be 10.0.4. Notice these are all different CIDR blocks, but they are within the VPC CIDR block. Alright, now we are done with our subnet creation. Okay, so we can see the last subnet we created, and then we can remove these filters, subnet ID, to see all the subnets within this VPC. So that's done. We have 4 subnets within our VPC. We'll go to route table so we can create the route table for our subnets. So create route table, give it a name, public route table, any name you like. It must not be globally unique. VPC ID, and then create route table. So these are the details of a route table. Then you go down, like you can see your destination, your target. Right, so we'll just edit route, and we'll add route, and we'll add 0.0.0. This is the IP address of the internet because we want to connect it to the internet. So our internet gateway, and then click internet gateway and select the internet gateway that you created or we created earlier, and then we save changes. So we have added this route. Now the next thing to do is to edit subnet association, so you know the subnets that are linked with our internet gateway. So we'll add our 2 public subnets, and then we'll save our associations, and that's done. So I'm just going to create an instance. So I'll just go to the top and type EC2, click on EC2 Elastic Compute Cloud, instances running, and launch instance. So you can give it any name you like. I'm going to choose my VM. Any name you like is okay. Then the image Ubuntu. I'm more comfortable with 20.04, but you can pick any version you like. Then instance type T2 micro, keep a login, create new keeper. If you already have one, you can put that. I'm just going to create one, new west pair. I'm going to leave space here because I want to show you guys something. Okay, you probably do not want to leave space, but even if you do, there's a way to work around that. So I'm going to show you the way to work around that. Okay, so click on it, and then you new file downloaded, and then we scroll down to network settings. Create security group, allow SSH, allow HTTPS, allow HTTP, and then edit network settings. So we'll choose the VPC which we created, and then we ensure that we are choosing our public subnet. So see that all the subnets Okay, so that's that, and then enable auto assign IP, and yep, that's done. So we'll just review all security group TCP, HTTPS, HTTP because we checked it that time. Then you go down and see our summary, just compare it with yours, and then we'll just click on launch instance. Okay, so we'll go to our instances, and this is the instance that we just created. This is my VM pending. Okay, so we'll click on it now that is running. These are the details of our virtual machine, and then we'll just click on connect. So we'll just go down and connect. So we have successfully connected to our virtual machine. So we are just going to ping google.com, ping google.com. So ping is basically a code that like tests the reachability of a host on an internet protocol network. So we are testing the reachability of Google. It tells you the amount of time it takes for data to travel between two devices or across a network. So we can see that all our data transmitted has been received, meaning it's reaching Google, thus the internet. So we'll go to our VPC tab right here. If it isn't open on yours, just go to the search bar and type VPC, and then we'll look for the VPC we created together. Then we'll just click on that. So we go down below and we can see our resource map, everything within our VPC. We can see our public subnet and our private subnets in their respective zones and our route tables. It's important to note that the private subnets we did not assign to our route table has been assigned to the default route table, and you can see our network router is our internet gateway. Okay, so you can just peruse and like click on it to see the links and the connections, like so what's connected to what. So we are going to go to our route table to create a route table for our private subnet because it gives us greater control. Yeah, so we just put in the name of the route table and then the VPC associated with the route table, create route table. Now that's done. So now it's time to associate our route table with the subnet. So edit subnet associations, and then we'll select our two private subnets and then we'll save the association. Next thing we're gonna do is to create an EC2 instance in our private subnet, right? So we'll just launch another instance, name, and the other details that we put is just basically the same details that we put for the previous one, just that for this one we are going to be using a private subnet, and then we won't allow https or http traffic. So we will just edit network settings and then just use our VPC that we created, and that's that. Auto assign public IP address, no, we are not going to enable that. And then we'll just go down and click on launch instance. Our instance has been successfully launched, so we are going to enter into our instance. We are going to connect to our instance. Now when we try to connect to our instance, we can see that it's not possible to actually connect to the instance via the route we use in the first place. So I'll open my public VM and refresh the page. Remember, resources in the same VPC can communicate with each other. So I'll be using my public VM, which is in the same VPC, my private VM, to communicate with the private VM. I don't know if you get that. Now I'll copy the private key that I got downloaded when I created the key pair. So v newest .pem. That's what I'm going to name this new private key. I'm going to just copy the content of the private key, and then I'm pasting it here, and then press escape colon WQ to save that. Then I'll navigate to my private VM SSH client. Then I'll copy this. Okay, on second thought, I think I'll just use the original name. I didn't record that part, so I'll just leave it on the screen. Okay, so ls list it, and I'll copy the code and paste it here. Ctrl Shift V, and yes. All right, so now we are okay. Permission denied. Okay, so we need to change the permissions. Just type in this simple code to change the permissions, and you press the up arrow key to go to the previous command and click enter. Okay, so now we are inside the private VM. This is what we call a bastion host. A bastion host is a server whose purpose is to provide access to a private network from an external network. So our public VM has provided us access to our private VM. We are going to ping google.com in our private VM, and then we press Ctrl C, and you can see that we are not connected to the internet. So then how do we connect to the internet? We use what we call NAT gateway, network address translation. NAT gateway is used to give a private network access to the internet without assigning each host a public IP address. The host can initiate connections to the internet and receive its responses, but not receive connections initiated from the internet. So it's basically a one-way communication. It can talk to the internet and get feedback from the internet, but the internet cannot talk to it. So let's go create our NAT gateway and then link it with our private subnet. So we are going to go to our VPC tab. I don't know why I'm always looking for my tabs. I'll just search here. Okay, or you can just search for NAT gateway directly, but I'm going to show you where it is in VPC. So you just select the VPC that we're looking for, and then we'll scroll down or click on NAT gateways. So we are going to create NAT gateway, and then we'll put in the name, any name of your choice, doesn't have to be globally unique. Okay, then we put in the subnet. It should be in a public subnet because we want it to be able to access the internet. And I forgot to put the elastic IP. Allocate new one, and yeah, we're ready to go. So create NAT gateway, and that's just it. It's not that hard. Go to route tables and enter a private route table. We will click on edit routes because we want to link our private subnet with our NAT gateway. So we'll click on add routes, and then we'll add 0.0.0. This is the IP address of the internet, and our target is NAT gateway, and then we'll pick the NAT gateway we created, and then click on save changes, and that's that. All right, so now we're going to enter our public virtual machine, and then SSH into our private virtual machine, and then see if we can connect to the internet. So this is our public virtual machine. We'll just click on connect, and then we'll go to our private virtual machine. I'm just closing a few tabs here. Let's go to the private one. Connect and SSH client. So we'll just copy the code here and then paste it right here, and right click to paste, So we are in our private virtual machine. Now let's ping google.com. And we can see that it's working, right? So we can press Control C to exit, and then we can see that all the packets transmitted has been received and there has been zero packet loss. So our instance can now connect to the internet. Okay, so this is bye for now. Don't forget to delete all your instances that you've created and all your VPCs and subnets that you're not using. Thank you for watching this video. If you did like it, please like and subscribe. And if you didn't, you better like it.